Congratulations on making it to the end of Chapter 3. So in Section 3.5, we're going to talk about active transport, endocytosis, and exocytosis. So again, that's endocytosis and exocytosis. These are forms of active transport. In 3.4, we talked about passive transport. Now we're going to talk about active transport. So think about that for a second. What do you think the difference between those two things would be? Well, in this particular case, the cells are going to use energy, whereas before they did not need to use any excess energy. Cells are going to use energy to transport materials that cannot diffuse across the membrane. So these are things that don't readily just move right across the membrane, and they are going to need to use active transport. Now, active transport requires energy input from a cell and enables a cell to move a substance against its concentration gradient. So this is stuff that's not going to automatically flow across that phospholipid bilayer. And so the cell is going to have to put a little bit of effort into getting these materials across the cell membrane. Passive transport requires no energy from the cell. So those were the things that we talked about in 3.4. Those were passive transport and no energy is needed. That just happens automatically. Active transport is powered by the chemical ATP. It's adenosine triphosphate, and we're going to talk about it a little bit here, and we'll talk about it more in the next section, or in the next chapter rather, as well. So ATP is going to be the energy source that is used for passive transport. That's being shown, it's kind of highlighted in this yellowish brown color, and as this transport's happening across this red arrow, energy is being used, and that energy is ATP. Active transport occurs through a transport protein pump. So that blue area that is kind of straddling the phospholipid bilayer here, this blue transport protein is a pump, and that is where active transport is going to occur, is through that pump. Cells use active transport to maintain homeostasis. And if you remember, homeostasis means that the cell kind of likes everything to be the same, everything to be normal all the time. And so the cells use active transport in order to maintain that state that it likes. A cell can import or export large materials or large amounts of material in vesicles during the processes of endocytosis and exocytosis. And cells are going to use energy to transport these materials in vesicles. So vesicles are almost like a great big grocery bag. Think of it as a grocery bag. And endocytosis is the process of taking material into the cell. So it's taking it in, it's endocytosis, and it's the process of taking material into the cell. So that really flipped through quickly. Let's do that again. Watch the pictures. So did you see that? It grabbed it from outside the cell. It made a little package around it and brought it into the cell. And then that phospholipid bilayer that had surrounded it broke up a little bit to allow that material out into the cell. Let's watch that one more time. So you're going to watch the pictures on the right. Okay, it's outside the cell, it's brought in, and then the phospholipids that had surrounded it to bring it through the cell break apart and release those materials into the cell. So I'm going to play it one more time. Okay, and that's endocytosis because you're bringing it into the cell, endocytosis. Phagocytosis is a type of endocytosis. So this is when your white blood cells eat bacteria or they eat a virus, and that's phagocytosis. Exocytosis, if you watched the video, if you caught that video real quick there on your right, exocytosis is when stuff is exiting the cell, exocytosis. And this is the process of expelling material from the cell. So it's throwing out the trash, and it's basically a reverse process of endocytosis. So watch what happens. There's material inside the cell no longer needs, and then it kicks it out. But watch what it does. It forms a little phospholipid bilayer around those materials and then kicks it out through the cell membrane. So let's watch it one more time. There's the material it doesn't want. It's surrounded. It's kicked out. It's kicked out of the cell. And that is the end of Chapter 3. Great job.